Well, shalom everyone. Today is December the 6th, 2021. We are discussing Parshat Vayiggash, the third of the four last parshiot of the book of Breshit, and the third in the stories of Joseph. We could say that this is the climactic parsha. I'm not going to be spoiling it for anyone by saying this is the parsha in which Joseph reveals himself to his brothers. It's really an extraordinary moment, really one of the great moments in the entire Bible, certainly of the entire story. And as usual, there's so much compressed in this moment. Last year, I took a look at our classroom last year, and we talked about the scene and the encounter and exactly what was going on, what transpired between Judah and Joseph as they were, as he revealed himself, as Joseph revealed himself. Um, and this year, um, I want to look very deeply at what is said between Joseph and his brothers, not and the instructions that Joseph gives to relate to the father, to Jacob. My theme, it seems, over the last several weeks has been that reading the story closely, reading the text closely, it's almost as if you get another story. And I think, of course, this is the way that Torah tries to communicate to us. The Torah compresses all of this information so tersely because there's just so much the Torah has to convey to us. And the goal of the Torah is to invite us, that is the Torah's readers, the people, to engage with the text. That's our job. Our job is to be involved in this, and the Torah does so in a way to invite us. As I quote Rick Beato, my music Rebbe, on YouTube. What makes this great? What makes the Torah great is that it invites us to be involved in it, and it invites us to interpret this and to ask, why does it say this as opposed to this? Why does the text use this language as opposed to that language? And just like music, the melody could go this way instead of this way. You have to ask yourself, well, why does a melody go one way instead of another way? Why this interval as opposed to another interval? Why this chord instead of another chord? And when you examine that, you get an entire level of information that's different from just the surface, different from just the melody in music, and different from just the text in the Torah. And that's what makes it so rewarding to study this. So with no further ado, we'll move into the text. This is the chapter in which Joseph reveals himself. I'm not going to do the entire petition that Judah makes before Joseph, which in itself is a remarkable text. We're going to go right from the text where Joseph could no longer control himself. So I'm going to read this in English. I put it up in big. I'm making it larger for everyone. I'm going to pin myself here so that we have background, spotlight for everyone. Good. All right. And I'm going to just ask that we all mute because we're getting a little background here. Okay, so we're going to get a mute. I'm just going to go through and mute everyone so that we get no background noise. I'm sorry. And then when it comes time to ask for comments, I will ask for you for comments, okay? And so we might get one. No, who is this? Bob Metz. You guys need to mute, I think. You're already muted. Okay, so here we go. Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone withdraw from me." So there was no one else about when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. Just want to stop there for a second and say how remarkable this is. This is a focus on the intimacy of this moment. If you recall from last week's Parsha, he brought them into his house. And I asked on the Parsha sheet last week, why does he bring, I didn't really answer it, but why does he bring them into his house? And the answer is because this is the most intimate moment of exchange between him and his brothers. And he doesn't want to do this publicly before the entire people. But you'll see that that's not possible. So have everyone else withdraw from me. It's going to be private. No one else about when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. His sobs were so loud that the Egyptians could hear. And so the news reached Pharaoh's palace. This is stunning in the sense that he doesn't want people to know, and yet the sound just wafts over Egypt. It's like the whole country knows what's going on. It's such a beautiful way that the Torah puts this. Joseph said to his brothers, Ani Yosef, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? Ha'od avi chai. They translated it as well. Is my father still well? But his brothers could not answer him, so dumbfounded were they on account of him. And Joseph said to his brothers, come forward to me. And when they came forward, he said, I am your brother Joseph, he whom you sold into Egypt. What a great line, right? He's telling them, it's me, I'm the one. And he brings them close, and the rabbis basically state the reason why he brings them close is to say that to indicate the circumcision. Now do not be distressed or reproach yourselves because you sold me hither. It was to save life that God sent me ahead of you. So he lets them off a little bit here. Their immediate sense of trauma or sense of terror, fear that Joseph might do something because, after all, he's been rather cruel to them up until now. Do not be distressed or reproach yourselves because you sold me hither. It was to save life that God sent me ahead of you. And now he's going to disclose what he knows. It is now 2 years that there has been famine in the land, and there are still 5 years to come, in which there shall be no yield from tilling. So he knows, he has this insight, he has the prophecy of the 7 years of famine, which in itself is astounding that he has this information ahead of time. God has sent me ahead of you to ensure your survival on earth and to save your lives in an extraordinary deliverance. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, Lord of all his household, and ruler over the land of Egypt. This is stunning what he says here, and how exactly he is relating this. He is saying, you have sent me to, God has made me father to Pharaoh, Av leFaro, we'll see that inside, Adon the Beito, Lord of his household, Moshel. So there are 3 terms here that will be very important in the next while. Av, Adon, and Moshel. Now, hurry back to my father and say to him, thus says your son, Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me without delay. You will dwell in the region of Goshen, where you will be near me, you and your children and your grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all that is yours. There I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, that you and your household and all that is yours may not suffer want. So we have a message. It's a highly structured message I'm going to show you in a minute, and this is what I'm going to focus on, that Joseph wants to convey. It's almost what we would call like a telegram to his father. He's encoded in this message a tremendous amount of information, which we will go into. You can see for yourselves, and my brother Benjamin for himself, that it is indeed I who am speaking to you. You must tell my father everything about my high station in Egypt, and all that you have seen, and bring my father here with all speed. With that, he embraced his brother Benjamin around the neck and wept. and Benjamin wept on his neck. Okay, very, very important. He's crying. He pulls Benjamin first because Benjamin is his full brother. And he weeps on Benjamin, and Benjamin weeps on him. He kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. Only then were his brothers able to talk to him. So I love the difference between 14 and 15. I'm not going to focus on it, but he embraces Benjamin and weeps on Benjamin. Benjamin weeps on him. He kisses all the brothers. He's not embracing them. He weeps on them, but they're not weeping exactly on him. So read between the lines here, and there are still a lot of differences. The tension between them is not completely alleviated, and the text is really hinting to that there's still quite a lot of tension between them. The news reached Pharaoh's palace. Of course it did, because everybody heard. Joseph's brothers have come. Pharaoh and his courtiers were pleased. Exactly how were they pleased is a real question, and why? And we have to look at that. So Joseph is in his own home. He's crying. It's noisy. Somehow the message, the information gets out. And that tells you something, that as private as he wants this moment to be, it's not hermetically sealed from Pharaoh. Pharaoh, it's not that he has spies on Joseph, but Pharaoh knows what's going on. He may not know how to interpret his own dreams, but he certainly knows what's going on politically for Joseph. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, do as follows. Load up your beasts and go at once to the land of Canaan. Take your father and your households and come to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall live off the fat of the land. You are bidden to add, do as follows. Take from the land of Egypt wagons for your children and your wives, and bring your father here." And we're going to look at exactly what Pharaoh says, okay? Because there's what Joseph says to his father via his brothers, and then there's what Pharaoh says to the brothers. "Never mind your belongings, for the best of all the land of Egypt shall be yours." The sons of Israel did so. Joseph gave them wagons, as Pharaoh had commanded, and he supplied them with provisions for the journey. To each of them, moreover, he gave a change of clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and several changes of clothing. And to his father he sent the following: 10 he-asses laden with the best things of Egypt, and 10 she-asses laden with grain, bread, and provisions for his father on the journey. As he sent his brothers off on their way, he told them, "Do not be quarrelsome on the way." They went up from Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. So, again, the Torah compresses a rather long journey into one verse, no details on the journey. When Joseph said, "Don't be quarrelsome," there is a sense that he's a little worried about this. So he's trying to prevent the fracture of the unit. They told him, "Joseph is still alive." Yes, I should intone it better. And they told him, "Joseph is still alive. Yes, he is ruler over the whole land of Egypt." His heart went numb, for he did not believe them. But when they recounted all that Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to transport him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. "Enough," said Israel. "My son Joseph is still alive. I must go and see him before I die." And so that's the text, okay? It's just an extraordinary story. In the text, you have Joseph saying to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father yet alive?" They're stunned. He says, "I am Joseph who you sold." And they are still somewhat stunned. There's this moment, a catharsis of re-encounter, reacquainting, tears. We have some kind of question of the emotional reaction of the brothers, because it seems, as the text is kind of hinting to us, while they might be emotional about it, they kiss him, uh, they may not be too happy about this. Certainly, they may not be happy. They may be angry at him for putting them through all of this difficult time. And so the text captures that ambivalence that they have. It's great that you're alive, but you are a horrible human being, basically. And then he says, in a highly constructed telegraphic message, this is what you do. Go. Thus says your son Joseph. God has made me Adon, a lord over Egypt, and this is what you do. Come down fast. Don't stand there. Bring your household, and I will set you up here. And exactly what is encoded in that text is what I'm going to talk about with you shortly. But I just want to see if you have any reactions first to the text, or any observation, or any questions you want to ask. And we'll pause here, and I'll unthink. You have Susie, or you have or.
Well, when he says Av Lepharo, I'm not sure that means father. I mean, Av is also a technical term. I mean, later on in the history of the language, you have Av Beit Din. That's not a father. It's a particular status. It's a particular legal status. So Av Lepharo is probably, you have Av, Adon, and Moshel. It's probably something related to those other two terms.
So you might be correct on a technical basis, but for reasons that I'm going to show you shortly, the choice of the word "av" is probably deliberate. It's probably deliberate in the ambiguity of both father and a kind of head. Yes, Av Beit Din is a technical, but that's much later than this. And if I mean, you can't escape the play here that the biblical that the text is really. It's not the narrator here. It's Joseph himself saying "Simene avla paro," right? And that Joseph is an av the same way that Yaakov is an av. And there may be something going on there in a way I'll show you in a second. Anyway, Mike, go ahead.
I think the brothers are all terribly frightened because they still don't know what's going to happen to them. They don't know if Yosef is going to try to have some revenge on them. And they don't know what's going to happen when they go back to Yaakov and report the news. I mean, because they told Yaakov, Taraf Yosef. I mean, they told him Yosef was dead and now suddenly he's alive. So they have no idea what's happening to them next.
I think what you've highlighted there is really the core of this, which is there by I want to say it in kind of political terms. There is and not really psychological terms, which is that the entire system has now been destabilized by this information, and in order for them to function, they have to attain a new equilibrium in terms of their relationship. Imagine, okay, so we all live in families, okay, and I'm going to assume that we've all been through family crises, whether they're part of the life cycle or other. When a family goes through a crisis, a death, a passing, or some kind of other destabilizing thing, everything gets thrown into whether, like, even if it's a good thing, if you win the lotteries, for example, right, which is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing, right? Families get destabilized by this because all of a sudden decisions are made and things get reconfigured because of that. And here, what Joseph has done, just from a family dynamics perspective, is he has inserted this very, very powerful, traumatic, and challenging piece of information into the family unit, and it's destabilized everything. And on some deep level, he has to understand this. Anybody else with a comment? Go ahead, Alana, and then Bob. Yeah. You have to unmute, Alana. Unmute again. Unmute yourself. No, you're not. You're still muted. Push. There you go.
Okay, so we should be very impressed with the behavior of Joseph, how he, I don't know what there is a better word in Hebrew, איך הוא התעלה, put himself in such a higher level,
yes,
to be able to tell his brothers that it's not their fault. They didn't cause this whole thing. God sent him for the reason that he will help the country, that he will help the world. Like it's not so easy for somebody that terrible things were done to him to reach such a high level. I mean, he cannot change the past, but he can change the way he thinks about the past in order to function in the future.
So I think you raise a tremendous issue here, which is, you know, if we give him credit here, like you're saying, if we acknowledge what he's doing here in order to move past the great transgression that the brothers have made against him. My question is whether or not that's going to work, and whether or not the brothers really understand this, and quite honestly, whether or not Joseph himself really means it, because Joseph is very powerful, and yet his own power comes with a lot of problems. Joseph is powerful in the extent that he controls a lot of things in Egypt, but it must have occurred to him, at least it occurs to me reading this, that he's only powerful to the extent that Pharaoh will allow him to be powerful. And that I have said many times, you know, that Joseph is really the first slave, because while he has a lot of power and he's tremendous responsibility, he doesn't have total freedom at all. He's totally subordinate to Pharaoh, and we'll see that more even next week. Bob, go ahead.
Would it be safe to say that Joseph is also having a Wayne Gretzky moment? What I mean by that is to skate where the puck is going and not where it has been.
It's very safe to say that, and it's a great, of course, we love the hockey analogy. You know, Joseph has the benefit of knowing the whole situation and having sized up the situation already, and Joseph has the benefit of making the strategy here. He doesn't, you know, he knows that he has to reveal himself to the brothers. He knows that there's a larger plan here. So you know, like Gretzky, he knows the whole ice at this point. He knows how this is going to play itself out, and that, I think, in tune to what Alana said, that gives him a sense of humility. But that humility is double-edged. That humility is, like, I know I have the power. And we need to move past this moment in order to get to where we need to get to, which is everybody needs to stay alive. The problem with everybody staying alive in Egypt is that they're all going to have to move down to Egypt, and that's going to set the unfolding of other events, and those events will lead catastrophically to the enslavement of the people, which of course is part of the divine plan. John, and then Barb Stever. Go ahead.
I think as a literary device, it's interesting. What Joseph says to his brothers in this scene is a recapitulation of the dream he said at the outset, where the brothers were going to bow down to him. And look what happened. It takes place.
So yes, this is an important theme, and the question which came up during last week's Parsha is, to what extent is the dream controlling Joseph's understanding or framing of the present reality? And to what extent is Joseph trying to adhere to the literalness of the dream, which is the sun, the moon, and 11 stars, which means that the father and the mother need to be there as well. And so up until now, it's only been 10 of the brothers. Now it's 11 of the brothers that are there, but the father and the mother are not there. And so if he is seeing the dream as an actual portent, therefore he must bring the father down. Or can we interpret the dream a little more loosely and say that the dream represented a basic vision, and that this was now being fulfilled in a way that he understood? So I think very, very important point. Okay, Steve.
Well, with all of Joseph's attempts to conciliate with his brothers, we have to fast forward when Jacob dies.
Yes.
The brothers are still nervous. It doesn't go away for another 20 years or whatever, right? Because then they came, if you fast forward, they came back to Joseph with a kind of a false report from Jacob, not to take it out on them after he dies. So they're nervous. And so
what you're saying is that they're lingering on with this tension, and they, depending on how you read that, and it's worth putting under the microscope or magnifying glass next week, which is, to what extent do they really believe that Joseph is forgiving, and they say to Joseph, our father has said, please forgive us. So we don't really know who believes what, but our point here is that this is obviously information that destabilizes the whole family system. Let's go on in the text and pick it up here, and we'll examine what we have here. So I have the whole Hebrew here, and as I scroll through this, I'm not going to read it in Hebrew. We're going to read it closely in Hebrew, but you'll notice that I've highlighted the word avi, one, av, avi, aviham, aviv, aviham. So keep that in mind, okay? So now I want to ask this question. What did Joseph say to tell his father? What was the exact message? And assuming that it's not an accident, I'm asking the question, what was encoded in that message? So this is, in the left side is the text, and right side is my comment. Maharu va'alu elavi. Hurry up! Get up and go to my father. Va'amartem elav, and say to him. So I'm saying, avi, this is not exactly a conciliatory phrase or word. My father, it's everybody's father. And by saying my father, he is taking possession of the father. Now, no sibling would like that. I don't care if you lived 4,000 years ago, you live today. No sibling wants to know that the other siblings dominate their father or, frankly, their mother, but that would be a different story. But he's saying my father, which kind of, it rubs it into them. I have a special relationship with my father. Okay? Now, I said before, as Susie commented about the word av, how many times does the word father appear in the whole disclosure scene? So I scrolled through it quickly, but avi is 4 times, avichem is 2 times, aviv is twice, avihem is twice, and av is once. Avi is my father, avichem is your father, and that's what Pharaoh says, go tell your father, and it's to the brothers as a group, to your father. Aviv, his father, meaning Joseph. Avihem, their father. And Av, it's only one. So I have 10 times that the notion of father is in this text, and once where father is in this kind of coded, maybe technical Susie term, that it is, father / fatherhead, figurehead, leader figure. Okay. The narrator uses it twice as his father and their father. I'm just going to scoot back here and show you like where this is, and those of you who have better Hebrew will appreciate this better. Okay, so maharu va'alu el. So wait, we'll start with when he discloses it. Okay, it says Vayomer Yosef alachav, Ani Yosef ha'od avi chai. Is my father still alive? And then he says, Vayisimeni l'Av leFaro. God has made me an Av, a father figure to Pharaoh. Maru valu et avi. Come, bring my father. Okay? And then he says, Vigadatem le'avi. You tell my father of all of my honor in Egypt. Umihartem v'aradatem et avi. You hurry up and bring my father down. And then they cry, they kiss. And then it's Pharaoh who says to Joseph, say to your brothers, Kechu et avichem, to the brothers. Pharaoh is saying, go up, you brothers, go up and bring your father. So Pharaoh is directing the brothers to their father, because Pharaoh knows that there is a father and that the father doesn't belong to Joseph only, the father belongs to all the brothers. Kechu et avichem, your father, unesatem et avichem, your father, you bring your father down. Okay, and then the narrator says, Joseph gave all these things, 300 pieces of silver, uleaviv, and to his father, he brought 10 asses, mazon leaviv, and food to his father. Vayalum Mitzrayim, they went up from Egypt and they went to their father. The brothers go to their father. And Vatachi Ruach Yaakov Avihem, when he finally gets up off the ground after being told, he is enlivened. Okay? So, my father, it's a crucial theme in the story. Joseph refers to himself as an Av leFaro, which is telling, what does it mean? Just as you, Jacob, are the Av for the family, so too am I the Av for Pharaoh, which is a very, very, I want to say an arrogant thing to say. But it's the truth in some way, but it's certainly not humble. It's, I have power. I'm more powerful even than Pharaoh, which is a very odd thing to say. And it's not exactly true because Pharaoh still has power over Joseph. What the text is trying to tell us, repeating the word Av 10 times, it's trying to tell us that this is the main theme. The Joseph story is part of the Jacob story. Joseph is trying to reconfigure the family, but he's also reconfiguring his role in the family in accordance with the vision in the dreams, like we said, right? So what's happening here is that, if you were to take this moment on the timeline of the family is falling apart. And Joseph, it's like the family is falling apart because of a global calamity, a famine. It's like in the experience of global calamities, such as war or migrations or pandemics, which we are in, these things affect everybody on the micro level. I don't have to tell anyone here how your family life has been affected by the global circumstances. At the very least, it means that the normal rhythm of visits and travel has been completely disrupted. You cannot do that, and that means that the global situation impacts the family and restructures the family. And so what Joseph is trying to do is to impose himself on the family structure. And the text itself is trying to communicate that because he sees that the brothers are in disarray and he wants to reassert the father's dominance over the family structure, albeit with his dominance also over the family structure. I think that part of what's going on here is that Joseph very much wants to be indispensable to the unit, and he wants to be the father to the unit, to the family, but he can't be. He's not the patriarch. And this is the tension that Joseph finds himself in. Joseph is the preeminent brother, but he's not their father. And the brothers understand that and resent him for that. Okay? So he instructs the brothers to say as follows. And it's like Ko Amar, when he says, thus says your son Joseph, Ko Amar bincha Yosef, he's in a sense issuing a decree or a kind of oracle. That phrase Ko Amar is more common in the in prophetic literature, and it strikes the reader here, us, as they're saying this is a demonstrative statement. And when I read this, I'm saying, what follows Ko Amar bincha Yosef is a highly structured, compressed statement that in its content will reveal more between the lines than at the surface. So he's deliberately personalizing the relationship. Ko Amar bincha Yosef, again at the exclusion of the rest of the brothers, which I think they had to really feel. The personalization of the father-son relationship to the exclusion of the brothers. Samani Elohim la'adon l'chol Mitzrayim. God has made me Lord to all of Egypt. Notice what he said to the brothers. He said, "V'ata lo atem shlachtani oti hena." It wasn't you that sent me here. Ki ha-Elohim. It was God. Vayisimeni la'av leFaro ula'adon l'chol beito u'moshel b'chol eretz Mitzrayim. Joseph is going to town here. What he says to the brothers: I'm a father, I'm a lord, I'm a ruler. Moshel. These are really critical terms. Of family, Adon has a kind of almighty sense. Umoshel is ruler, is like a despot, okay, to all of Egypt. The coded message to his father omits the word Av and Moshel. All he wants to say to his father is Sameni Elohim la'adon l'chol Mitzrayim, a lord, basically. To his brothers, he exaggerates his power. To his father, he limits his power. That's why to the brothers he's saying Av Adon Moshel, but to the father he says, tell him I'm an Adon. Tell him I'm an Adon, which might be saying like I want to say that Adon, stripped away of all of its theological connotation, is simply like I am a vicar, I am a lord, I am a duke, I have a place in the echelon of the high society of Egypt. Okay? Rida Elai, Al Ta'amod, highly compressed language. Get down here, to me. Al Ta'amod, do not stand. Okay, it's a command, it's direct. Rida Elai is positive, Al Ta'amod is negative. Don't do this, don't do that. It is movement versus inaction. And the effect of the statement, Rida Elai Al Ta'amod, is it's urgent. It's urgent. You need to come down now. You have to come down now. And so what? V'yashavta be'eretz Goshen. You're going to dwell in the land of Goshen. Up until now, we don't know about this land of Goshen. But the land of Goshen is going to appear very, very significantly in the later text. This is the first time that this is mentioned, and Joseph is doing it at his own discretion. Joseph is beholden to Pharaoh. Pharaoh's the one that has the prerogative. Okay? Vayita karov elai. You will be close to me. Ata uvanecha uvnei vanecha v'tzoncha uverkarcha v'chol asher lach. You will be close to me. You, your sons, your children, your grandchildren, your sheep, your flock, and all that is with you. And I have this shtick about counting the words of a statement and finding what's the middle. So when I count the words of Joseph's statement to his father, with after Ko Amar bincha Yosef, the exact center is the highlighted portion, Elai Ata, which tells me everything that I need to know. The content of this message is not migration. The content of this message, encoded in this message, is the restoration of my father-son relationship. My father-son relationship has been completely disrupted, shattered, and torn. But what I am telling you here is I want to restore that relationship. And so that's why I'm telling you to come down now. Vayita karov elai, you will be close to me. And the way he puts this, you, your sons, your grandchildren, which is so stunningly odd. right? It's not you, my brothers, and my nephews and nieces. It's you, your children, your grandchildren, your sheep, your cattle, and everything that belongs to you. Okay? You and your children function as a unit. Ata uvanecha v'nei vanecha. That's one unit of the family. V'tzoncha v'uvakarcha v'chol asher lach. Everything that is yours is another unit. So in other words, he's saying you, your sons, your grandsons, your sheep, your cattle, everything belongs. So there's, in communicating it this way, it's basically saying it's you, your sons, and your grandchildren, basically the entire household as it's constituted by its male membership, and everything else. Okay? So, you know, a good, solid feminist reading of this would say, well, where are the women here? And I think that's a really important question, because Pharaoh is gonna say something about that in a second, okay? But note again the way he says it. You, your sons, and your grandchildren. And notice how the trop, the cantillation, defines this. Ata is defined. Vanecha v'nei vanecha is another unit. Children or sons and grandsons. And then sheep, cattle, one unit, everything else, another unit. Okay? I will sustain you. V'chilkalti otcha sham. I and you. You are the family. V'chilkalti otcha sham. He doesn't say, I'm going to sustain everybody there. He says, I'm going to sustain you. Now, of course, you could mean everybody, but that's the point. Ki ot chamesh shanim ra'av. We have 5 more years. Pen tivaresh. You will be displaced. That is to say, if you stay in Canaan, you're going to be crushed. So you can't stay there. And if you're going to be crushed in Canaan, the whole project of the covenant falls flat. Ata uvetcha v'chol asher lach. And look how he says it here. You, your household, and everything that you have. That's different from what he said up here. He said, you, your sons, your grandchildren, your cattle, and everything you have. Here, it's you and your household and everything that you have. And what I'm saying is that there's a transformation that's going on here. The message encodes a transition. Right now, the family is in disarray because of the internal family dynamics of the broken relationship and the global famine. In order to reconstitute the family cohesion, where it becomes you and your household and everything that you have, in order to do that, you have to come down to Egypt. Okay? It will be you and your household and everything you have, as opposed to you, your children, your sons, grandchildren, flocks, and possessions. In other words, you will be the defined entity, the head of the household. You will reconstitute yourself as the head of the household. By coming down, you will do this. You will be elevated once again. But right now, it's falling apart. So what's interesting here, I love the brothers very much, because I sense in Joseph just, it's not megalomania, but it's and it's not just, I am intoxicated by my power, but it's almost in his own mind unchecked power. And the brothers function as a check against Joseph's political power, because they're entrusted with saying a highly coded message to their father. And what do they in fact say to him? So they say to him, first of all, O Yosef Chai, he's still alive. Okay? They didn't tell him to say that. Joseph didn't tell them to say this to his father. He didn't say, tell him I'm still alive. But they say, O Yosef Chai. So the question is, why do they say this instead of thus says your son Joseph? So the question
say that.
Of what's that?
Of course they would say that. I mean, it's like, that's like the biggest news in the world. I mean, nobody has to tell them to say that.
So, and so in a way, your answer indicates kind of the obvious. It's like obvious that they have to, and I want to say it's like, how do you break? I mean, I wrote this here. Is how would you do that? How would you, are you going to say, we came back from Egypt and guess what? Thus says your son, right? It's like, but they also don't say, Father, we have news for you. You better sit down when I tell you this, okay? And
that would be bad news. That would be bad news. Good news, spit it out.
Okay, so I'm going to just stop the share. I want to see everybody here. Go ahead, again, Ellie. So I've been in these situations under both circumstances where it's been good news or bad news, right? I have good news when I come over to someone's house and tell them that they're the honoree. It may be good news and bad news, by the way. Right? So it's like it's a simcha, but it's good news in it, and you really. I mean, and I had Cliff Lacey in shul a couple of years ago when we did this parsha. I had him explain what happens when you convey to someone some startling news. It actually does have a physiological, cardiological reaction. Bob, I see you nodding there. Of course it does, because it's a sudden transition in blood pressure. It could actually lead to death, right? It could actually lead to some kind of very, very sudden event. It's not an accident that we have, sudden cardiac events based on shock. Right? You want to carefully watch the way you communicate, things of that nature. So what's startling in this scene is that the brothers don't seem to know this, and they don't seem to know what everybody who's been around a human being kind of knows. If you live a life, you know that shocking information is something that you have to be very, very gentle with. At least that's how I react to it, and that they don't take a precaution. That the Torah itself doesn't want to tell us that they handle this information gingerly or tenderly. They don't. It doesn't say that they lovingly sat their father down and say, "Look, we the play." Does this a little bit, right? I know I'm making reference to, but I believe that the play is a midrash on this, okay? And as all interpretations are, but the text itself is saying, I mean, it leads me to ask the question: what's the matter with you? Don't you understand that this is going to this information, as wonderful as it is, may kill your father, right? Don't you know this? Have you not been around? Do you not understand what shock is? After all, there have been other shocking things in the world, right? All right, I see a couple of hands here. Are you still, these are from before, go ahead, Lana. Go ahead.
The way, the message that they said to Yaakov, the first thing, Od Yosef Chai, is similar to the question of Yosef to the brothers. That was just the first thing that he said, Ha'od Avinu Chai. So, these are the most important, the food and the other things, they will come up. And also, what did I want to say? The words Av, Moshel, and Adon.
Yes.
Sometimes a little bit similar to Avinu, Malkeinu.
Correct.
Because a ruler should be a melech, but also Abba to his people. So Yosef was Moshe and Adon, but also Av.
So I think what you say actually anticipates or reminds, it ought to remind us, when he tells the first dream to the brothers, they say, Hamaloch timloch aleinu. Are you going to be the king over us? Im mashol timshol banu. Are you king over us? Are you going to rule over us? So yes, absolutely. And Av and Melech Moshel, these are two sides. And I want to say that the Moshel is the harsher of the terms. The Moshel seems to be a ruler, has less emotional relationship with the subjects than the Av does.
More dominating. More.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other comments here, Steve? And then John. Go ahead, Steve.
So the rabbis were more sympathetic. There is a midrash, I don't remember the details, of Dinah singing to Jacob and insinuating the words, Joseph is still alive.
Yes,
Into a song to ease the message.
the rabbis, God bless them. They're lovely here because, they do this interpretation because they can't come to terms with the fact that there would be so much cruelty in the brothers. I think what that reflects is that they're really struggling with the plain sense of the text, which is far from soft and gentle and conciliatory, but harsh. And the rabbis are they'll find the textual means to communicate a much softer way of transmission of this information than the text itself leads to. John.
I have a comment, I think, on a statement you made when you were talking about the different possibilities of what will happen. And you said something, and the covenant will not be fulfilled. My comment is Joseph does not refer to the covenant at all. And I wonder, a related question, we talk about the patriarchs. We do not include Joseph in that.
That's correct.
And maybe this is related to why Joseph maybe doesn't see a covenant.
I think that this is such a great theme of the text because it has to do with generations, and it has to do with the way a successive generation sees its predecessor and the way a successive generation relates to and envies its predecessor. We all live in a generation that's post the greatest generation. So I think we can relate to this in a somewhat very analogous way. When and I'm referring to, let's say, the passing of Senator Dole. So here was one of the last defining statesmen, quote unquote, of the generation, who subsequent to his role in the Senate became a rather symbolic exemplar of that great generation in all of the idiosyncratic ways that he became afterwards. Whether you liked him in the Senate is a different story. He became much more of an amiable fellow afterwards, and certainly that picture of him, at George H.W. Bush's funeral, saluting to him, is very, very moving. My point is that, okay, so here we are now 1, 2, 3, 4 generations after that, and we who have watched movies since Saving Private Ryan have had this whole mythology of that's the greatest generation, which we believe they were great, they were amazing. But what it does to you is say, well, what are you, right? What's your great accomplishment? Woodstock? What's your great accomplishment? The personal computer? I mean, it creates a divide. When Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob hear the word of God, have God come to them, make sacrifices to God, and have God appear to them, and God escort them, and angels, blah, blah, and the miracles and all that stuff. And God doesn't speak to Joseph directly. On the contrary, Joseph has no, but the only thing that Joseph has is the answer to why am I here, which we assume he asks his father, who are we, and what am I? And his father would explain, it doesn't say this because it's implicit. It's like, well, why are we here? It's the Torah takes it for granted that this generation lives as part of it, and that they have communicate. I mean, the thing that Joseph knows is that there is a God, okay? Because he says this all the time. He's been saying this from the moment he interpreted the butler and the baker's dreams. Halo lelohim pitronim. I am keyed into something godly, but God is not speaking to him, and he knows that he's on the other side of that divide. And so the covenant is not made with him at all. He wants this, he envies this, but he doesn't have it, and that's his problem. So in a sense, my thesis in this class is that Joseph wants to reconstitute the family on Egyptian soil in order to move the covenant story forward and also to claim a kind of paternal patriarchal role, quasi-patriarchal role in the family, which of course the brothers, if you were one of brother, I would resent it. Of course I would. I don't want, why would, what makes him better than all of us? That's ridiculous. It's just the accident of all of this that he understands as God's plan. Okay? It would be terribly, terribly resentful. Okay? Let me continue. Go ahead, Alana, go.
Remember last year we were concerned that Yosef never got in touch with his father or
Yes.
the other way. So through the year, I kept thinking about it here and there, and I read here and there, and Joseph had to wait until the dreams came true to show that his brothers and the father, in a way, came to bow down to him as he saw in his dreams.
Yes.
And now that it took place, that he's the Moshel, the Adon, the Av, the dreams came true. So he can reveal himself.
I think that's part of the story, that he's aware of these dreams. The dreams are exerting a kind of not a pressure but an influence on him, that he wants reality to conform to what was revealed to him. Okay.
I read a modern midrash about the what Joseph writes to his father and what his father writes to him about. It's like didn't you know how anguished I was, and then didn't you have to understand I wasn't free, I was under Pharaoh. It was a brilliant rendition.
And look, the text lends itself to that kind of interpretation because we just, we're left asking all these questions. Gittel, you had a question. You have to unmute.
So I'm on your wavelength completely that he brought them down and shows the paternal sense, but he brings them down and now he is in control of them.
Yes.
Something they were in control of him. Now he's going to be in control. He could have said, I will continue to send you provisions, but he didn't do that. He's now going to control their life.
That's right. He wants that very much. Okay, and that's going to be in line with the rest of the text. I'm mindful of the time here, so let's just zip through the balance of it. So they say, Od Yosef Chai, Joseph is still alive, and I'm saying that's kind of cruel. Why didn't they say, why didn't they prepare him? Sit down, we have something to tell you. I like the midrash Steve brought up. Is there any feeling for him? And then he said, V'chi hu moshel b'chol eretz Yisrael. They picked out of the three terms, Av, Adon, and Moshel, they picked the harshest term. He is the ruler of the entire land of Egypt, as opposed to the Av and the Adon. Why didn't they use those terms? Moshel is the term that he used when he first dreamed, Mashol Timshol Banu, we talked about. And Jacob's heart, Vayafag libo, his heart stops. He didn't believe them. Vayidabru elav et kol divrei Yosef. They said all the things that Joseph told them, meaning then at this point they relate to Jacob the coded text. Okay, fine, but our story doesn't tell us that they repeat it. It just says, it doesn't tell us word for word. It just says they tell him everything that Joseph said, which is ambiguous enough to say it's both the message and what preceded the message. But it's not only the message, and they have violated the message already by dressing it up in the way that they have. Vayaret agalot. He sees the wagons. Asher shalach Yosef, laset oto. He sees the wagons. He says, geez, a bunch of wagons here. That must mean it's true. And he is alive. Vatachi ruach Yaakov avihem. The spirit of Jacob, their father, the brother's father, is enlivened. Vayomer Yisrael, Israel says, enough, Joseph, my son. Od Yosef b'ni chai. That must have killed the brothers. My son Joseph Ilcha ver'enu b'terem amut. I will go and see him before I die, right? And the brothers are there and going like, what are we, chopped liver here? Jacob gets the message. It's about Jacob and Joseph, father and son. So the message, I'm saying, conveyed in the coded text of Joseph to Jacob is, you need to be brought down to me, to the exclusion of the other sons. What must have been going through their mind? Are they happy for Jacob? Are they feeling angry, guilty? That this is their punishment for what they have done? Are they remorseful? What will be necessary for them to do in order to function as a family? This is nothing other than a complete reconfiguration of the family, and they have to acquiesce because their lives depend on it, and at what cost. So I want to just conclude by showing you, look, this is what the brothers, Joseph says to his brothers in the right-hand column, and what the brothers say to the father. Joseph to the brother, Maharu v'alu et avi. Okay, so the narrator says, V'alu mitzrayim v'avol eretz Canaan. And they say to him, Od Yosef chai, v'yichil Moshe be'eretz Mitzrayim, v'afag libo, v'yidabru elav, and et kol divrei Yosef asher diber elem. But he said to them, Sameni Elohim, a whole coded, prophetic message. Okay, Jacob sees the wagons, and he believes it. What is the role of Pharaoh on this? And this will conclude. Pharaoh hears everything. Up until now, Pharaoh doesn't know about the brothers. Pharaoh has to make a decision. In Moral Achicha, he says, go tell your brothers, Zotasu, do this. Take your beasts and go to the land of Canaan. Bring your father. To Pharaoh, Jacob is your father. Your households, it's not only your father's household, but it's everybody's household. Uvau Elai. Joseph wants you to come to him. I want you to come to me. This is a way of giving Joseph a little bit of a smack. Joseph thinks he's in charge here. Folks, I'm in charge. I'm inviting you. Joseph was very nice of him to offer you, but it's at my pleasure. Uvo Elai, ve'etna lachem. I will give you et tuv eretz Mitzrayim, the best of the land. V'ichlu et chelevar, you will eat the fat of the land. Okay? V'atatzuveta, you've been commanded. Kichu lachem eretz Mitzrayim. You take the wagons for letapchem velin shechem, for your children, for your wives, unesatem et avichem, and bring your father. This is stunning, because Pharaoh gets the whole picture. This Pharaoh is a smart Pharaoh. He says, wait a second, it's the brothers that have come here, but the brothers have a father, and the brothers have wives, and the brothers have children. It's not the father who's going to come with his household, it's this whole family that's going to come under my tutelage, my wings, okay? And I acknowledge, Pharaoh's the one who reminds them of their families. What do we make of that? On the one hand, it's quite a lovely gesture. I love reading it and going, oh, look, he's a benevolent Pharaoh. He's so happy to have the family. Oh, Joseph, I make him into Tevye. Oh, you bring your father, bring your wives, bring your nephews, bring everybody. And it's a lovely gesture. On the other hand, what's to worry about here? I want you to relocate your whole family so that you will have your life here and you will be forever detached from your land. So that's what's going on here. And I think that this is like immigration policy in a nutshell. We want you, we need you, but we want you to assimilate to us. And every migration in history, especially when it comes to America, has that conflict at its very basis, right? We want people to come, and we want to be, like in America, we want you to be American. Now, of course, you can be American and still be related. That's what the great miracle of America is. But you see in Europe, you just don't come to Europe and become French, right? That's, they're going to fight a whole election on this again about this whole question. Can anybody who's not French be French? What Pharaoh wants is you come down here and you become Egyptian. And the only way you do that is you come with your whole family, okay? And it's almost as if, I was thinking about ways to analogize this. when you offer someone a job and they have to relocate, let's say from New York to California, you say, look, you're going to come here and you're going to move here. We're going to give you a great package. You're going to move your spouse and your children,
Family, yeah.
and you're going to move your whole time, and we're going to find you a school, and we're going to find you a neighborhood, and we're going to find you everything, and you're going to live among us because we want you. We want you, right? And that's exactly what's happening here. And that is Pharaoh exerting power over the Jacob family unit. He says, because why would Pharaoh want more of them? And I think here I'm going out on a limb and saying the following. Because in Joseph, he has loyalty, servitude, wealth, and power. Why wouldn't he want more of that? Joseph comes with such DNA, such great human resources. Let's face it, Joseph gave Egypt its power. Joseph gave Pharaoh its wealth. Joseph gave loyalty and servitude to Pharaoh, right? And here, Pharaoh's making a bet that if he brings the family, he'll have more of this. It's a good bet, okay? But it's also a bad bet because the brothers are not Joseph, and that dynamic gets played out elsewhere in the text. Okay, so that's where we are here. So what I'm saying here is that the dynamic between the lines, the story is not only a story of, I am Joseph, is my father still alive? The story is a story of the reconfiguration of the entire political dynamic of the family. That what we have here is Joseph trying to assert power over the family, the brothers resisting that power, Joseph, the brothers recommunicating Joseph's message in a way that will not make him look as powerful, but he is necessary. And all of which is taking place under the nose of Pharaoh, who has his own interests here. Pharaoh has his own interests in moving the family and keeping Joseph subordinate and keeping everyone together. He likes it. There's a benevolence to him, but he's shrewd. I think Pharaoh is very, very shrewd. Okay, I'm going to go to everyone who's got hands up. And I'll unpin myself, and here we go. So we got Bob. Go ahead.
Well, along with what you posed with this, I'm wondering if there's also another encoded message relating to Goshen. And I ran across a very interesting article called The Kabbalah of the Dreidel, which says that first time those 4 letters appear, but they're in a reverse order. And there are certainly multiple miracles that are taking place, whether family reconciliation, surviving the famine, all the other things. So I'm just wondering to what degree you think Goshen and the letters mean something, particularly a connection to Hanukkah, which they point out.
So I've never made that connection, but it's as always, it's Kabbalah gives us something lovely to think about. I would say that what Kabbalah forces us to do is to close our eyes and meditate and I want to say take a glass of wine, sip the glass of wine, smell some incense, and dream and make these kinds of very joyful, creative comparisons and collisions, and that's what's going on here. But I think on the text itself, Goshen functions literarily because of the word Vayiggash or Vayiggash. Right at the beginning of this parsha, the parsha is called Vayiggash, and he came to. He how would you translate Vayiggash? It's like he approached him, but it's not only he approached him; it's a get close to me. Goshen encodes in the very word Goshen the place of being close. Vayiggash, Gashu, Nigash. Right? Am I getting it right, Susie or Ilana?
Carefully, come carefully.
Come carefully.
Not powerfully.
Okay.
Come.
So then what the play, the beautiful play that the text is making here is that the land of Goshen is the land in which they are nigashim. They are coming close to him. Right?
It's also Nes Gadol Chaya Sham.
Okay, fine. Right. I mean, I'm too much of a biblical purist to superimpose the Hanukkah story that happened many centuries afterwards onto this. But as I said, whenever we encounter this kind of commentary, I'm thinking, of course, it's what it is lovely. It's lovely that the text itself is so expansive; it lends itself to such creative reinterpretation. That's what it's going. The Kabbalah is a creative reinterpretation of a text. Okay.
And it's really nice gadol hayapo if you're sitting in Israel.
Exactly, if you're sitting. But I appreciate it. Bob. Go ahead. Anybody else with a comment? John, and then Steve.
Well, just very briefly, getting back to the covenant, Pharaoh's speech and saying that you're going to leave that land forever, that's the end of the covenant right there.
Exactly. Okay, so I want to say that it's not that every time we read of a non-Hebrew ruler, we see in them a proto-anti-Semite. I certainly see the Exodus Pharaoh as a proto-anti-Semite. He's an anti-Semite. But Pharaoh it's not that he's an anti-Semite. Of course, that's an anachronistic term. But he has to come to terms with the fact that if this, and to what extent he's aware of this is obviously a big question. But if this is a special nation and has a special status, it's well within his interest to crush that. And to crush that relationship. And if he knows that they have a special relationship to the land, which Joseph may or may not have told them, we don't even know. That's conjecture, and that's the stuff for Midrash. But it would be well within his interest as a regional hegemon to remove any kind of conflicting power or small power from them. Look, you place yourself in the ancient world in Egypt, and you know that you're the most powerful entity in the world, and that the only rival power for you is the Babylonian Empire, which is to the north. What makes the Bible so interesting as the Bible is that the land of Israel is somehow strategically bridged between these two centers of power, the Egyptian world power and the Babylonian world power. It's not an accident that we analogize this to our own time. It used to be the Cold War between Russia and the United States. Now what's emerging is, the global power conflicts between most America and China. And what does it mean to live in a world tethered by these two huge powers? And so what you have is that if you are Pharaoh, you would like to crush Canaan. And you'd like to exert hegemonic power and influence over Canaan as soon as possible. And that way, but one way to do that is by getting all the Canaanites in your orbit. To me, it's like a slam dunk. Okay, Steve, go ahead, and then Ilana.
You covered a lot of territory, so I've got 2 points or 2 questions. The first is literary. Compare Eliezer making his approach to Lavan, to the family. The Bible repeats the whole speech twice, almost word for word, with subtle differences. Okay. Here, there's absolutely no repetition.
Correct.
Joseph, and then the succinct story. How do you figure that?
I think it's such a great observation. What it tells us is that the brothers have such disdain for Joseph, even still, that the text doesn't want to spend time on it because the text is more concerned about the other things going on here. But in conveying it this way, what the text conveys to us is that the enmity, the tension, the conflict between the brothers and Joseph still exists. Look, I read the Eliezer story, the servant story, as one of the great novellas in Genesis. It's a great short story because the text wants us to like the character of the servant, right? The servant is loquacious. The servant communicates in such verbosity to Lavan. You just enjoy the storytelling there, and that's really the power of that text. It's you want to be engaged in listening to us because he is the loyal, dutiful servant of the great, his great master. He is Sancho Panza to Don Quixote. He's telling the story, and his job is to engage both the family and, frankly, the reader. Here, the job is not to engage us. The job is to show us that there's conflict still. The job of the brothers is to bring the father down. It's kicking and screaming that he wants to come down, but he knows he has to do this. And what we didn't get into is that he ends up going down, and the very next scene, he makes all these, sacrifices, and God speaks to him and says, Yaakov, Yaakov, don't worry about going down there. You will go down, but you will go up, as you'll be buried in the land of Canaan. Don't worry about being outside of the land. It had to be very tragic for Jacob to know that he would die on foreign soil, as it is for everyone who is away from home when they pass away. Nobody wants to die on foreign soil. So it takes God to comfort him alone. And Jacob is seeing, the symmetry of his own life. He left at the beginning. He's now leaving at the end. The story, while it compresses what the brothers say, it does so for a reason, which I think is to highlight the conflict between them still.
Okay, so the second point,
Go ahead, and then Alana.
you already alluded to it. I find that if you know the geopolitical situation around the stories of the Bible, you really understand what's going on a lot better.
I agree.
Okay, so the Pharaoh, the way I read it, Pharaoh is a Hyksos Pharaoh,
Okay.
which started around the 16th century. And they were not necessarily Canaanites, but they were Semites that came in and ruled Lower Egypt. And they ruled from a place in or around Goshen. So that area is very important.
Right.
And so by having Jacob come in, Jacob was at this point, they're a big tribe. They're more than the 70 souls. They're a lot more. And by having them come down to Egypt, he's absorbing them so that they don't become enemies. And also, Egypt had hegemony over Canaan at this point.
Correct.
So
Okay.
if you understand that, what you said makes a lot of more sense, because he is moving the people around for political and geopolitical reasons.
Correct. Ilana, go ahead.
Just a little connection between the Parasha and Chanukah.
Okay.
This is the first immigration
Yes.
that they went down, but then they will go up again in the
Okay.
future. The way we light the candles is from down going up.
Very nice. Always nice. It's good
That's
to
what we tell children, but
Very nice. No, these are lovely connections, and it just shows us that you take two different kinds of stories, and you, by blending them together, by situating them across, you get an entirely new narrative, and that's what's so particularly joyful about our study, which we have now brought to its conclusion. And I want to thank you so much. Thank you. I know, Bob, you mentioned, I'm going to talk to my buddies on Parsha talk about this. We'll see what they think. They always disagree with everything I say, so I don't think that there'll be anything different now. We'll have a good debate about this. Okay. All right, everyone.